Stuart, Friday night game, bit of a different challenge for you. How's this week gone?
I don't see it as a different challenge. I've always, I think going way back, a number of years back, when the manager here first time around, I think that was the kind of inception of the Friday night games, if memory serves me right. So with that being a successful season and everything that sort of came of that, probably personally in my own mind and probably a lot of the supporters, I think everybody quite likes that. I think everybody looks forward to it. There's the element of if you get a good result, it becomes a better weekend for you, that type of thing. But I don't really focus on that too much. I think what's most important for me, and it's the kind of boring stuff, is making sure that our preparation's right, getting into the game, trying to maximise the days that we've got. I think you could argue it's a more difficult task for Partick Thistle, given that they played Friday, Tuesday, and then they play Friday again. But in some ways, I think that them winning a game of football, always how I look at it, and winning that game of football, getting a clean sheet, for me always builds confidence. You're going game to game. So there's a few different ways of looking at it, but very, very simply, I look forward to the game and I look forward to the challenge, and everything that I've seen off the players this week kind of marries into that as well.
Obviously, this is your first game back here against Partick. How do you feel like the Ross County squad has developed and changed, and I guess more come in line with what you would want from them since then? Yeah,
listen, not perfect by any stretch of imagination, and I just feel that if I sit here and I say it's perfect, that's not to be negative in any way, shape or form. It's definitely not. I'll go back to it. I think statistically, the numbers, points, games won, all clean sheets, all these things show that there's been a bit of an evolution. It's definitely not where the club, the supporters and the players absolutely want it to be, but we always knew that it was going to be difficult to try and change it. Of course it is, and sometimes you've got to do that in small steps. We obviously get to the nitty gritty and the crucial part of the season, but what I will say is for spells in the game on Saturday, especially the first 45 minutes, it was by far the best that I'd seen from the group, in terms of how comfortable we looked in the game defensively. So we still had that bit. Offensively, I thought we were a real handful, a real threat, working the opposition goal, sustaining attacks in the opposition half. I touched on the decision that leads to Dunfermline goal and how pivotal that can be. You guys have probably had a chance to look back at it and agree with me that it's a ridiculous decision. However, I did see loads and loads to like from the team, and for me it's the best that it's been by a distance. Even when we've won games, I've felt at times we can be far more creative and far more offensive, far more controlled in possession. But for me this week has been really positive to try and show that, illustrate it, and try and build that little bit extra confidence, not just to pat players in the back because we were 2-0 ahead and we've drawn a game to each, but to look more into the finer details of what worked. And in football, we've spoke about it since I came in at the start of January. In football, confidence is massive. Sometimes you build that on results, sometimes you build that on just realising that you're a good player and that you see pictures and that you can execute it. And two well worked goals from us has to build confidence for the likes of Kieran Phillips specifically. So no, that's what I've centred on, that's what I've focused on, try to get away from the refereeing decisions, even though we all know how impactful that can be in a game of football. But there was loads to like for the players. And probably my last point on that as well, it's probably the first time we've seen a reaction to adversity from the group. When we went to 2-2, I think you could see that we had a real good goal to try and win the game 3-2. So again, that's not a criticism of the players, that's something you've got to find. You've got to find that spirit, you've got to find that spark when someone goes against you, and I felt that I did see that. We didn't get the goal, but there was a real willingness to do so.
Stuart, I think Partick are 8 games unbeaten in the league, but you were the last team to beat them in the league, and that was obviously your first game in charge. It was a daunting fixture, but how much can the group take from the fact they've already got that win over them?
Yeah, I think that particular game, I think eventually Partick Thistle settled in and probably done what they have been for most of the season. I think what we done was got off to a brilliant start, and we always talk about that first goal, then we were able to follow up with a second one. And probably for large chunks of the game thereafter, we settled and played from within a shape. I do genuinely believe we're better. But I think that Mark will probably argue that opening period of that game was a bit of an anomaly and something that they've not really seen over the course of the season. So I expect a really difficult task. Watching them Friday, watching them on Tuesday, they've not had their challenges to seek either. When you look at injuries, it's not a huge squad, I wouldn't suggest that they've got, so they've had to absorb that. But I think we've seen two versions of them, Friday and Tuesday. I think they played a different way on Tuesday from what they did on Friday. So I think it shows a versatility, and also that they still have one or two changes where they can freshen things up. And I look forward to the game, I always do. At Firhill, I think it's a great venue. I think the pitch was looking really good there on Friday when I seen it against St Johnstone. But everybody's got something to play for at this minute in time, Paul. That's the bit. We think that our cause and our fight is the most important, which we should do. But every team you play against in the league at this point's got something to play for. So when that's the case, strange things can happen in games of football.
And the team lines will be interested for supporters on Friday, because I think Mark made 4 changes in midweek, and I think you made 4 at the weekend as well. So it's just trying to get that edge and maybe surprise your opponent.
Yeah, it probably is. I dare say when our team line came out on Saturday that there would have been a few questions asked to me. I actually thought about that after the event. When you look at it by trade, I think we had a lot of defenders on the pitch, but I think the setup and the formation was anything kind of but that. So, I don't know, possibly that was a little bit of a surprise to Dunfermline. But again, Paul, to be honest with you, I think you're going to see a fair bit of that this season, because I think it's important to make sure that there is a freshness. You're not necessarily trying to bamboozle your opponent, because you need to be able to execute what you're trying to do. But I think it does get to a stage of a season where more and more in modern football you see more changes, and that could well be the case for us on Friday.
And final one for me. Plenty at stake for both teams. I think Thistle drawing against St Johnstone leaves them absolutely no margin for error. Any drop points, more or less, is massive for St Johnstone.
Yeah, it is. Again, I'm trying to focus, and I will be focused on our cause and our fight, because for me it is the only one. But yeah, right to acknowledge that. I think they've done great. I was complimentary of what they've done when we played against them a couple of months ago, and I am still here today. You've just given the statistic that we were the last team to beat them in the league, so again that shows their level of consistency, how difficult they are to play against, how difficult they are to beat. We've been on a difficult run in that sense as well, playing the top 4 in our last 4, and 3 of those being away from home. So it is a difficult task, but you don't get to pick the fixtures, you don't get to pick what order they come in. I've just said that in another interview there. This idea that we get to this stage of the season and everybody says, oh, we need to win and we need to do X, Y and Z. I suggest that that's always the case for the first game of the season, and then you start to build something. That's not been the case for us. We've picked up a slightly different scenario at a different stage, and now it's just a clear focus of trying to maximise the opportunity that we may have within the next string of games.
If you were a player at this stage in the season, Stuart, would you be absolutely relishing the challenge and the chance to bounce back from the situation that the team is in?
It's my favourite thing. I mean this wholeheartedly. This stage of the season where it just goes game after game. Games have significance. I've been both sides of the coin as a player, fighting a relegation battle here, as is the case, fighting and winning a league, or fighting to get into a top 6 in the Premier League. It was always my favourite time of the year. It really was. I'm trying to build that mindset within our players as well, and a lot of guys will have that. I just think we get to a point sometimes now in football, and this is me getting on my soapbox again, where everybody wants to talk about being a good player, and everybody gets so frustrated if they're not picked, and the whole world's against me, and all this different nonsense, and wanting your agents coming on and speaking to you and wondering why your player's not playing and all this garbage. See, if you're doing really well, you're going to get a game. If you're the best player, you're going to get a game. And if you relish the challenge and the pressure that comes at this stage of the season, then you're generally going to do well. If you fear it and you want somebody else to talk on your behalf, and you want somebody to speak about the game as opposed to getting out in the pitch and doing really well, then I'm not so sure you're going to be the best player for us. But go and thrust yourself into it, play through the pain, play through adversity, play in the good moments as well as the bad ones. I think they're the guys that really step up to the plate and have an impact.
Is that a thing now, agents phoning you to say that a player should be...
My favourite thing, so it is. My favourite thing.
The game's changed.
Yeah, we used to we winning leagues and having successes and all the rest of it. You still had to sit and wait to the last day of the season to find out whether you were getting a contract. That's the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Simpler times, Alistair. Simpler times.
Any sort of change in the injury situation?
No, nothing really at all. We'll have a wee check over Josh Reid, who missed at the weekend, and we've obviously got 2 guys coming back for suspension, and unfortunately we've got Sean Mackey going out the other direction.
The way the fixtures fall, you see the free chance to go 4 points clear of Airdrie tomorrow, and then you play Airdrie, so it's a chance to go 7 points clear. How big an opportunity does this week or so offer?
I think we just need to go one stage at a time, one performance at a time, one half at a time is kind of what we've been speaking about as well. I think if we start getting carried away with ourselves, we've tried to build on one victory, try and make that 2 consecutive, trying to string results together. I think sometimes if you look too far ahead, then you start to lose a wee bit of focus on that one task in hand. And I'll use Stevie Frail here as my assistant manager. That's often how he's spoken to the players at times, is nailing halves of football, nailing small stages of football, small periods of football. So again, in answer to your question, what we need to do is try and get a good start to the game, similar to what we did against Dunfermline. We had a real good start to the game. And then we need to try and build on that. Once you get in at half time, how do you respond and how do you react once you come out that dressing room? And I think if we look much further ahead than that, then you're starting to kind of muddy the waters, so to speak.
In terms of complete guaranteed safety, you've got 5 points to make up, you've got 6 games to do it. How big a task is that?
It's a huge task. It's a huge task, but it was also a huge task to come from 5 points behind and 5 points adrift at the bottom of the table. So at this minute in time, we've been able to do that. We've been able to claw that deficit back. But I think the league's so difficult, as I've already mentioned, because everybody's hampering and hurting each other with results and performances, because everybody's got so much to play for. So I think what we've done, for again, want a better phrase, is we've stopped the bleeding to this point. But we do need to kick on. We do need to try and put together a string of results to see if we can make up that next gap. And all I ever spoke about was trying to catch the team ahead of you. I never spoke about trying to get into playoffs or go above mid-table or whatever that may be. I always spoke about trying to catch the team that's ahead of you. Again, at this minute and only at this minute in time have we done that, but we need to try and do that again.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Great guys, thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot.